He said, tapping his pen like he was tossing out a harmless fact. We can hire 3 fresh grads for what we pay you. He didn't flinch. No hesitation. Just straight eye contact, like he was proud of the calculation. My name is Ben Trask. I'm 55 years old. For nearly 2 decades, I serve as the lead systems engineer at Structure Properties, a mid-sized property management company that grew from 8 buildings to over 60 across 4 states. I built their entire infrastructure, everything from the ground up. And in this moment, I was being replaced by a spreadsheet. Across from me sat Darren Lane, the new CTO, 6 months into the role and already gutting the department like a man on a deadline. He wore a tailored navy blazer, a watch that cost more than my first car, and an expression I'd seen before. Confidence unearned by history. Beside him was Diane, head of HR. She avoided eye contact, fingers laced together, a closed folder resting in front of her like a silent execution notice. This isn't personal, Ben, Darren continued. It's just strategy, realignment of resources. I stayed quiet. You've been instrumental, he added, like it made the blow gentler. But we're shifting toward a more scalable tech model. Agile pods, vendor integrations. We need fresh momentum. I didn't respond. There was no point. Diane cleared her throat. You'll find the severance details inside. 10-week salary. Full PTO payout. We've also extended health coverage through the end of the quarter. She pushed the folder forward. I took it, opened it briefly, then closed it again. Darren tilted his head. Nothing to say? No, I said. It's clear. You're taking this better than I expected. What good would arguing do? He shrugged, like he respected that. We'd appreciate your help with the transition. Just a short consulting window. For weeks. Maybe 6. Assist the new team while they come up to speed. I'll think about it, I said. We all knew I wouldn't. The walk back to my office felt slower than usual. I passed the touchscreen kiosks I'd helped roll out last year. Part of a tenant self-service pilot that saved the company 6 figures. The hallway lighting flickered, as it often did, because the motion sensors were tied to a buggy firmware I flagged 6 months ago. They never approved the fix. At my desk, I looked around at what 19 years had become. A few worn notebooks. A framed photo of Lena and our daughter Sarah on her college move-in day. A bobblehead of Nikola Tesla someone gave me after I migrated our billing system from a fragile desktop app to a secure cloud environment. I packed it all into a cardboard box that once held an old backup drive. As I left, I passed Connor, one of the new hires, fresh out of college, eager, polite, and completely unaware of how complex the systems he inherited really were. Hey, Ben, he said with a nervous half-smile. Sorry to hear. Good luck, I told him. He didn't respond, just nodded, then turned back to his screen. Downstairs, as I stepped into the parking garage, my phone buzzed. Jamie, DB admin. You're gone? Seriously? What is happening? I stared at the screen a long moment before sliding it back into my pocket. The lake behind our house was still half frozen when I got home. Late March in upstate New York. The sky was gray, the trees bare, the wind sharp. Lena stood on the back porch in her coat, sipping coffee. She didn't say anything when she saw me, just opened her arms. I dropped the box inside the door and walked toward her. It's done, I said. She pressed her forehead against mine. I'm so sorry. I exhaled, the cold air mixing with breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for months. That night, we ate dinner in silence. Spaghetti, garlic bread, 1 glass of wine each. Afterward, I poured bourbon and sat on the deck with a blanket over my legs, watching the lake thaw a little more with each hour. Lena came out and joined me. What now? She asked. I stared out at the water. I don't know. Something will turn up. I didn't sleep much that night. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. Just a hollow kind of quiet. The feeling you get when you reach the end of a road that was longer and harder than anyone knew. Most people at Structure had no idea what I did. They thought I handled tech stuff, reset passwords, deployed updates, occasionally explained why the Wi-Fi was down. What I actually did was design a sprawling, interdependent system that held the company together. I was the one who took their patchwork of Excel sheets and unencrypted access databases and turned it into a seamless, secure ecosystem. I built the tenant portal, the auto-pay system, the maintenance ticketing logic, The predictive analytics tools that helped the finance team model vacancy risk. I wrote half the logic in raw Python and the other half in whatever scripting language the vendor of the month forced on us. And no one documented any of it. Not because I didn't want to, but because every single proposal I submitted for a documentation and redundancy team was rejected. Too costly. Not urgent. Maybe next quarter. Next quarter never came. 10 days later, the calls began. First it was Connor. He left a voicemail that sounded like it was recorded while he was sweating bullets. Hi, Mr. Trask. Ben, they're getting some weird errors in the payment gateway. Like, the maintenance system is triggering false overdue notices. Not sure what's causing it. I didn't call back. The next message came from Darren himself. His voice had lost some of its edge. Hey, Ben, just a quick check-in. We're having a few hiccups with the tenant database sync. Totally expected during transitions. Wondering if you'd be open to some brief consulting work. $400 an hour. Just a few hours here and there. Delete. Then Diane emailed me. Subject, follow-up. Hi, Ben. I hope you're doing well. We'd like to formally extend a consulting offer. Flexible hours, remote, $450 per hour to assist with systems onboarding. Let us know. Best. Diane. That same day, Jamie messaged me again. Systems crashing. Maintenance tickets aren't syncing with leasing anymore. Connor's panicking. Darren's ghosting people. I poured another bourbon. This wasn't about payback. This was physics. You rip out the spine of a system with no plan and no guidebook, you fall flat on your face. 3 days later, my inbox pinged with a subject line that made me pause. Opportunity at NovaPoint Technologies. The sender was Derek Chung, CTO of a fast-rising property tech firm. We'd crossed paths once, years ago, at a housing tech conference in Chicago. Hi, Ben. I've been following your work from afar, particularly what you accomplished at Structure. Your system was one of the most stable infrastructures in this industry, and I know they didn't value it properly. We're currently preparing for a full system rebuild and expansion. We need someone who can build a resilient, future-proof architecture from the ground up. Would you be open to a conversation? I replied that evening. We met the next morning at a cafe near the harbor. Derek was late 30s, sharp, clean-cut, no fluff. He had a digital notebook open before the coffee hit the table. I've seen what you built, he said. Your fingerprint is all over the most stable platforms in our space. I've worked with 3 X-Structure clients. They're still talking about your custom integrations. Not always in a good way, I joked. No, in a good way. The problem wasn't your system. It was the people who didn't understand it. He leaned forward. I don't want to patch something broken. I want to build something better from day one. And I want you to lead it. What's the role? I asked. Chief Systems Architect. Full benefits. Stock. You'll handpick your team. You'll build the thing your last job never let you finish. And compensation? 25% over your last salary. I nodded slowly. Give me a day, I said. But in truth, I already knew. That night, I sat on the deck with Lena again. The lake was finally thawed. The wind was warmer. And the bourbon tasted less like medicine. They want me, I said. Then go build it, she replied. Build it your way. By the time I officially joined NovaPoint Technologies, Structure was already on fire. I didn't need to dig for updates. They came to me, unsolicited, unfiltered, and increasingly frantic. The first came through Jamie. She messaged me one night via Signal. Ben, you wouldn't believe what's going on. The new team tried to patch your maintenance system and accidentally nuked the auto-pay logic. Tenants are being billed twice or not at all. One guy got charged $8,000. I read the message while standing over the grill in our backyard, flipping chicken thighs. Lena was laying out plates inside. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because I knew this would happen. When I left Structure, I walked out with nothing but a cardboard box and the knowledge in my head. I had always tried to get them to prioritize redundancy, documentation, and training. They never funded it. Now they were dealing with the consequences of treating their systems, and me, as disposable. At NovaPoint, everything felt different. Derek Chung, their CTO, gave me full control. No micromanagement. No bloated planning meetings with buzzword consultants. He trusted me to do what I was brought in to do. And what I did was start over. From zero. We built a brand new architecture, modular, secure, scalable. Every component had documentation baked into its lifecycle. We used tools that track changes in real time, enforce peer reviews, and log dependencies. No more tribal knowledge. No more hidden logic. I hired 3 engineers within the first week. Solid people. Mid-career, experienced. No egos. We spent our mornings in quiet strategy huddles and our afternoons coding like we were building something that mattered. Because we were. Derek asked me one day why I was obsessed with version control policies. I laughed and said, because I know what happens when no one knows what version they're on. He didn't ask again. Meanwhile, structure unraveled. Darren called me twice in one day. I let both go to voicemail. Ben, hey, we're experiencing some minor disruptions in tenant services. Just growing pains. Wondering if you'd be open to a few consulting hours? $500 an hour. Flexible. He sounded composed, but I knew the tone. He was panicking behind that calm. Later that afternoon, Jamie messaged me again. Autopay crashed again. Maintenance tickets aren't syncing with leasing. 2 dozen complaints already. Darren's blaming the consultants now. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I had cared. Too much. For too long. And they threw that away. 3 days later, my doorbell rang. I opened it and found Darren standing there. The transformation was stunning. The confident, blazer-wearing executive from my exit meeting now looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. Shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed, time missing. Ben, he said, trying to smile. Can I come in? No, I know how this looks. You mean like the guy who said I was too expensive showing up on my porch? He swallowed. It's bad. The entire tenant platform is crashing under load. Autopay's gone haywire. Leasing data is misaligned. The consultants said the system was too custom, too specialized. Because it was, I said, it had to be. You were scaling faster than your tools. The board is offering to reinstate you, he said. Same salary. Signing bonus. We'll put you in charge of the rebuild. Lena walked in the hallway behind me, handed me a mug of coffee, and leaned against the wall with her arms crossed. I sipped the coffee, then said, I'm already building something better. From the ground up, with people who listen. Ben, please. We'll double whatever Nova Point's paying you. It's not about money, I said. It's about finally being treated like more than a line item. Then I closed the door. At Nova Point, the momentum kept building. I brought in 2 former colleagues from Structure, Tanya and Adam. They both left shortly after I did, once it became clear the company was bleeding out. When I called them, neither hesitated. Tanya arrived on a Monday morning and walked into the team meeting like she'd been there for months. Feels good to work somewhere that plans for scale, she said, flipping open her laptop. Adam joined a week later. He was quieter but deadly precise. He started cleaning up our database logic before he even unpacked his monitor. Our team worked in harmony. Real discussions, real decisions, no red tape, no political games. It was what engineering was supposed to feel like. Then came the bombshell. Derek walked into my office one afternoon holding a printed email. Harmonstone's pulling out of Structure, he said. They want us to take over their portfolio. I stared at him. Harmonstone was massive, 10,000-plus residential units, spread across 6 metro areas. A tech partner's dream. They're serious? I asked. He nodded. They've lost confidence in Structure systems. They heard we're hiring their former architects. I paused. We're not ready for that kind of scale yet. Not unless we staff up. What would it take? I leaned back and started listing off requirements. 12 engineers. Dedicated migration team. 8 weeks of development. Secure data, transfer systems. 24/7 monitoring. Full documentation during every sprint. Derek listened without blinking. You'll have it, he said. They're giving us 10 weeks. I'd rather be early than perfect. We got to work. By week 3, Tanya had built an adaptive data bridge to convert Harmonstone's tenant records into our new schema. Adam engineered a rollback-proof failover system that could preserve integrity even if an entire node cluster failed. I focused on architecture, designing a platform that could flex and grow, layered redundancy, microservices, seamless patch deployments. It was the system I always wanted to build. This was everything structure refused to become. Then came another email. From Justin Doss. Subject: We owe you an apology. Ben, Darren is gone. He misrepresented everything to the board. The consultants confirmed our worst fears. The system is unstable and unsalvageable without your input. The board is prepared to offer you full authority and a clean slate. Compensation is open. Team of your choosing. We need your help. Please reconsider. I read it twice. Then I archived it. Because 2 days later, Derek called a company-wide meeting. We've finalized the acquisition, he announced. Structure is officially a NovaPoint subsidiary. Their valuation dropped by 65%. We acquired everything, including infrastructure, at a discount. And then he turned to me. Ben will lead the technical integration, he said. He built their original system. Now he'll build its replacement. That night, I stood in my new office, taller windows, higher floor, view of the river. Lena called. How does it feel? She asked. I looked out at the skyline and said, like I'm finally getting to do it the right way. She smiled through the phone. You always deserve to. 3 days into the integration project, I visited the old structure data center. It was surreal. I knew every rack, every blinking light, every cable I'd labeled with masking tape and a Sharpie because they wouldn't pay for color-coded tags. Now it was all being ripped out. A few of their old engineers watched me as I walked past. Some looked ashamed. Some looked relieved. I wasn't angry. I just nodded, because it wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about building something that worked and making sure it never depended on a single person again. Not even me. 12 weeks after NovaPoint officially acquired Structure, I stood in the doorway of the old server room I had once practically lived in. The hardware was still there, aged but intact. A few blinking green lights. Some old network switches I'd begged them not to cheap out on. The same cooling units I had personally sourced years ago when the racks were overheating every August. I took a deep breath. Ben Trask had built this room. Every cable, every redundant failover, every emergency protocol that had once kicked in like a silent guardian. And now it was all marked for decommissioning. Want to do a final walkthrough? Derek asked as he stepped beside me. I shook my head. No need. We're building forward now. We left the room in silence. The next morning, I stood in front of a conference room packed with the remaining Structure technical staff. The ones who hadn't jumped ship. Some looked relieved. Some looked embarrassed. A few looked genuinely eager for a fresh start. Derek stood beside me as he addressed them. You all know Ben, he said. You may not have known the full extent of what he built here, but you're standing on it. He's the reason this company's systems held together as long as they did. And now, he'll be leading the integration of both platforms into something stronger. He stepped aside and nodded at me. I walked to the front. I'm not here to blame anyone, I said. I'm not interested in pointing fingers or revisiting old mistakes. We're here to build something better. And this time, no one is getting left in the dark. Every module we write will be documented. Every system we deploy will be understood by more than one person. I paused. No more single points of failure. Not in our code. Not in our teams. They didn't clap like it was a TED Talk. They didn't need to, but I saw it in their eyes. People who had been adrift, now finally given direction. That was enough. The integration took 3 months. We rebuilt everything. Module by module, Tanya migrated the tenant management logic into our new framework. Adam overhauled the financial side, ripping out brittle billing scripts and replacing them with fault-tolerant, real-time engines that could scale on demand. I focused on infrastructure, cloud failovers, access protocols, CI/CD pipelines that didn't require midnight hotfixes or cross fingers. Every day was a grind, but the kind that made you proud. We made mistakes. Of course we did. Some old data formats didn't port cleanly. Legacy custom fields through unexpected errors. But this time we had the team, the tools, and the discipline to catch it early and fix it right. No band-aids. No guessing games. Just clarity. One afternoon, I was reviewing our final deployment checklist when my phone rang. It was Elon, VP at Harmonstone. Ben, he said, we're expanding into 3 new states, adding 18,000 units. After the way your team handled our transition, we want you handling that one too. I didn't hesitate. We're ready, I said. Later that week, Derek and I sat with a Nova Point board. They reviewed the reports, the charts, the retention numbers. The room was quiet for a moment before the board chair looked up. This turnaround is the most successful acquisition integration we've ever seen. And then she turned to me. What's next, Ben? I didn't expect the question, but I knew the answer. We train the next generation. That evening, over dinner, I pitched it to Derek more formally. A technical education division, I said. Internships, apprenticeships, boot camps, but focused on real systems thinking. Not just code, but structure, documentation, how to prevent what happened at structure from happening again. He nodded immediately. Do it. Full autonomy. Build it from the ground up. 6 months later, we launched the first cohort. 10 students, 5 instructors, a curriculum built around one simple principle: build systems that last. I opened the first day of classes myself. My name is Ben Trask, I told them. I spent 19 years at a company that didn't realize what I'd built until it started falling apart without me. The code wasn't bad. The system wasn't broken. But the culture was. Nobody knew how anything worked except me. And when I left, they panicked. That's not going to be you. You're going to learn how to build platforms that scale, tools that explain themselves, infrastructure that doesn't need you glued to a help desk at 3 a.m. I looked around the room. You're not here to be heroes. You're here to build quietly powerful things that endure. And you're going to make sure the people who come after you don't have to guess what you were thinking. They listened, really listened. And in that moment, I felt something shift. This wasn't about fixing the past anymore. This was about building the future. 1 year after the acquisition, I packed up my integration office. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a well-executed deployment. I stacked my notebooks into a bag and unplugged my charging dock. On the whiteboard was a diagram of the new multi-region architecture. Tanya had drawn smiley faces next to the security modules. I left them there. As I stepped out, I ran into Justin Doss in the hallway. He looked older, softer. My father asked about you, he said. He's retired now, golfing in Arizona, but he still checks in on company news. How's he doing? He said one thing the last time we spoke. Letting Ben go was the stupidest thing we ever did. I didn't know what to say. I just wanted you to hear that, Justin added. And thank you for not walking away when you had every reason to. I didn't come back for revenge, I said. I came back to build something that wouldn't break when the wrong person left. He nodded. I think you did. On a quiet autumn evening, I sat on our back porch with Lena. The trees around the lake were painted in oranges and reds. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the water. We had soft jazz playing and a warm blanket share between us. You ever think about how it ended? She asked. Yeah, I said. All the time. Do you wish you'd handled it differently? No, I said. They were never going to change. I just had to stop trying to convince people who didn't want to listen. She nodded slowly. And now, I've got a team that listens, a system that works, and students who might never need someone like me to rescue their platform someday. She smiled. You're building yourself out of a job. I chuckled. Finally. We sat in silence for a while. Not the heavy kind, but the peaceful kind. The kind you earn. A few days later, I got a package at the office. No note. No return address. Inside was my old coffee mug, the one that used to sit on my desk at Structure. It was chipped. The words had faded, but they were still legible. Done is better than perfect. I smiled and placed it on the shelf above my new whiteboard. Because this time, it didn't have to be perfect. It just had to last. If you felt this story hit home or reminded you of something in your own life, drop a comment below. And if you want to hear more real stories like this one, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.